Going live. And we're live. Aha. Hello, folks. Thanks very much for joining. We're just coming up to 10 o'clock, so we're just popping on a wee bit early, as always, just to check that everything's working okay. Seem to be okay with the sound and the video. And we'll say hello to everybody once we get started properly on at 10 o'clock. But in the meantime, if anybody's out there, just say hello. There's Chaya just saying in the comments section that shalom all, hope everyone is well. And sorry, I won't be able to join you all tonight. Pardon me. So yeah, hopefully as I said, good to hear from you, Chai, and hopefully get to see you sometime soon. And apologies, as always. I suppose we're going on the Friday here, but well, there's 10 o'clock, folks. So I'll say hello there. Thanks very much for joining me. My name is Doc Sloan, and welcome to my science fiction station, also known as the Doghouse. And tonight is our Children of Dune book club, chapter 14. And Justin, I suppose the main reason why we're going tonight, one being yesterday being Halloween. Pardon me, and I haven't got my throat medicine yet, but I literally finished this about 20 minutes ago. So just unfortunately, my working week has changed a little bit, and just picking up some more students, I've had to open up another day, etc. So I've kind of lost a day in terms of how much work I can get done with this. And excuse me. Pardon me. So generally, this was one where I just didn't get it done on time, and I was working to try and get a little audiobook done for Halloween as well, which I've put up on the station there. Pardon me. Just for Halloween, I suppose Halloween special, we put up an audiobook version of Ray Bradbury's The Emissary. I'll have to say I've been dying to get something like that done for a long time. Mainly, as you probably know, I got a lot of dental surgery done for quite a long period of time there, and it's kind of changed the shape of my mouth and how I speak and stuff like that. And so I've been a little bit kind of curious to see if I could get another audiobook done, how it would sound. And the really strange thing was that it's been so long since I've done it that the software has updated itself and changed all its effects and filters, etc. And particularly its use of the compressor, which has done my head in because I've got all my settings sort of scribbled up there. So I've kind of had to kind of relearn the software a wee bit and figure out what's different and what's new about it. So that's what we popped up for Halloween. And as I said, it was just in terms of getting this stuff done, we didn't have it done for yesterday. And I was absolutely shattered as well. So we've been working at this all day since we got up, finished 20 minutes ago, and we have a working set of notes. But again, this is going to be a chapter that's very heavy in dialogue. We have basically a sort of an interaction between Farad'n and Tyekanik, if we can go with that. And then we have the arrival of the preacher in this chapter as well, which is, I find this whole chapter a little bit strange. In all honesty, too. But there's some good ideas in it, and I think we have the preacher speaking a little bit as Frank here, and it takes us away from the action on Arrakis, and we arrive on Salusa Secundus, which, again, by all accounts, is a planet that should resemble Arrakis in many ways. It should be a bit of a hell world, and our location here is going to be House Carino's palace on Salusa Secundus. In this, I suppose, this garden area, and in particular, we're going to sort of move through this area to a little spot with like a stone sort of bench, a fountain, some black roses, etc. So it's a very specific kind of interesting little scene that's being set up for us here. And so we get to see a little bit of insight into Farad'n's character, I suppose, here, and we have the enigmatic preacher on the planet as well. So there's Julian Thompson saying, hi Julian, how you doing? And Carlos saying, hey Doc, hey guys, thanks very much for joining us, Carlos. It's good to see you both. Oh, pardon me. As I said, I do apologize about this bouncing about, but the Friday night's always meant to be a backup to our Thursday night. And of course, we've lost the GMT +1. We're just back to GMT now. But I hope you had a nice Halloween, by the way, folks. I I don't know if you were doing any fancy dress or trick or treating with the kids or any of that sort of stuff. It's the second year in a row we've bought a bunch of sweets for the kids in there, and not one of them has come. Second year in a row we've had no kids trick or treating, which has been quite weird. So I end up wrapping up the bags of sweets and giving them to my students, But we just it's kind of odd. It's not a sort of thing we always used to get kids sort of trick or treating around here. And we have a sort of primary school not too far from us. But I don't know if it was quiet where you guys are at, or if that was part of your thing. But let's see. Let me just get ourselves organized here. And I've been beginning to think, by the way, there's another thing is that some of the more interesting kind of ideas that are building up in this book, some of the more sort of complicated things that we're going to hit soon, I think. I was actually thinking that by the time we hit the middle of the book, it might be wise to sort of take an episode of the book club and just, rather than particularly look at a chapter, kind of try and cover as many of those ideas as possible in an episode, just to sort of chat them through and sort of discuss them, I think. Particularly when it comes to a number of these kind of esoteric religious ideas that we'll be approaching. And we're starting to get tidbits of that kind of stuff at the moment. But this is a slightly different take on this chapter, I suppose. And it's possibly it's a thing that we see certainly from the ancient world, I suppose. Another form of oracle, a divination, is oniromancy, which is the divination of dreams. So we're going to have a little bit of that's how the preacher is going to be described in this. It's quite interesting. But as I said, it's a dialogue heavy chapter. So these are the ones that take me forever to write out, and then we tend to run through them pretty quick because it's a lot of dialogue. There aren't too many big heavy ideas in this, but there's a few, and we'll just sort of have to see as we go, folks, I suppose. But it's an interesting chapter. As I said, it's a breakaway from Arrakis, but we have another shift, and in some ways, it what's happening here with Farad'n, if you like, kind of mirrors what happened with Paul. I suppose ultimately way back in June, whenever, as much as we have Paul's test of the Gom Jabbar, it's also the talking to the Reverend Mother about his dreams, and here we have Farad'n, grandson of Shaddam IV of House Quino. Oh, ladies, behave, having dreams, and someone coming to interpret them. And in this case, if we run with it, we think that the preacher is Paul Atreides, then it's Paul himself who's coming to interpret these dreams. And there's something about this chapter. It's one of those careful what you ask for, if you see what I mean. Because as much as Farad'n and Tyekanik think that this preacher is here for a reason, they're not actually. I suppose they're going to get half of what they want, I suppose. So let's have a look at our epigraph, folks. And so if anybody's got any we sort of questions or comments, fire away. Julian saying Derry Halloween was always great. Yeah, it's become a very big thing here, Julian. Halloween festival up in Derry City these days, and I think that's the reason. By the way, I think that's the reason why we're not seeing the trick or treaters, if you like, in there, because it's become such a big event in the city. It's I think a lot of the kids, certainly we're not too far from they want to go to it. But Halloween's very much its thing, and the city of Derry City sort of own it, really, don't they? This day and age, But yes, indeed, I think that I have a strong suspicion that's why there's no trick or treaters, but it's just become very, very popular here. Carla says our family tradition was to give out a 50-50 mix of Hershey's and chocolate. X-lax, and let blind luck decide your fate. Is it trick or treat after all? Very good. Oh, well, when I was a kid, trick or treat I always thought was very much an American thing. But when I was very young, I suppose I sort of had an age when maybe trick or treating started here. But when I was very young, you had to go around on Halloween and sing for your for your sweets or whatever. what was it? It had this thing, Halloween's are coming and the geese are getting fat. I don't know if you know this wee song. Would you please put a penny in the old man's hat? If you haven't got a penny, a halfpenny will do. And if you haven't got a halfpenny, then God bless you. And then hat. And they're supposed to give you pennies or halfpennies or candy. But yeah, the trick or treat sort of thing started, and then we stopped doing that. Which is interesting. I would say that stopped whenever we had decimalization and got rid of the halfpenny. They used to be able to buy halfpenny shoes in this country. So if you had £1, you could buy 200 sweets. Just the wee sort of, is it taffy is what it's called in America, those kind of wee sweets, like that chews. But yeah, trick or treat. It's kind of sad. I was kind of looking forward to seeing, we used to take our son out, but I kind of look forward to seeing the kids in their costumes and stuff and having some sweets to give away. I think it's a nice thing. It's a good thing. But as I said, I think there's too much spectacle at the big thing up in Derry these days. I think that's what draws all the kids away, So here we go, epigraph number 14, folks. Okay. This was Muad'Dib's achievement. He saw the subliminal reservoir of each individual as an unconscious bank of memories going back to the primal cell of our common genesis. Pardon me. Each of us, he said, can measure out his distance from the common origin. Seeing this and telling of it, he made the audacious leap of decision. Muad'Dib set himself the task of integrating genetic memory into ongoing evolution. Thus did he break through time's veils, making a single thing of the future and the past. That was what Muad'Dib's creation embodied in his son and his daughter. And this is from the Testament of Arrakis by Hark al-Ada. Now, of course, that is Farad'n, isn't it? But simply put, I got a very simple diagram of this, which was past to future, and we had from the genetic memory to the prescient vision to the now in the middle, that this was one single thing, as we're told here. Pardon me. So this was Muad'Dib's achievement, we're told. And it's about, I suppose, seeing, if we break it down, seeing the reservoir of each individual, so of each person as an unconscious bank of memories going back to the primal cell of our common genesis. That's interesting, getting into the sort of whole evolutionary thing. For those who don't know, I suppose, what is it? Darwin's on the origin, was it on the origin of species by means of natural selection. The question was, I think if I'm not mistaken now, I have no idea what version of that book I have myself, but I think there's in total about 18 kind of rewrites and edits or something by Darwin until the final product, if you like. But the question of what is the origin of species was never properly answered by him in that book. And I think he had a go at it in The Descent of Man, but ultimately, as far as I understand, according to from Darwin's point of view, what is the origin of species? He didn't know, and he had a guess that it was. If my understanding is correct on that question, he ultimately believed that it was a form of spontaneous, that new species appeared just sort of spontaneously. It was a form of just a random generation, if you like, or something like that. Which I always thought was quite interesting. But it's one of those ones that people go, what's the origin of species? And in that book, I suppose it's an interesting thing. It's not an answered question. As far as I know, it's been a long time since I've read it. And the last time I read it was probably for doing the original research on this, which was probably in 2006 or 2007, I think. I've got a copy somewhere. I must dig it out, actually. The whole history of the evolution, I got into that for the whole Samuel Butler thing. I find that really interesting. That the whole Before I started reading about that, I was pretty much, I'd say, the same as everyone else. I thought that Darwin came up with the theory of evolution. That was the new thing. So I didn't realize that at the time, really, that both him and Alfred Russel Wallace came up with it independently. But what I found was fascinating was, sorry, excuse me, was there's this whole argument about evolution in Victorian society, all prior to that. And it actually went back quite far with Lamarck and people like that, and Erasmus Darwin and their ideas, etc. And so the popular in this day and age was that evolution came up and sort of bit everybody in the backside all of a sudden, and that it kind of was a big shock to Victorian, the Victorian era, if you like, and that wasn't the case at all. There seemed to be quite a healthy conversation about evolution in that society at the time, which I think is always interesting. It's not something the way people who sort of tend to discuss the subject at this stage would look at it. Carl saying, did you all do Hell Night too? Pardon me. I've been work. Julian Thompson says the epigraphs are my favourite part of every Dune book. Hark al Hadat Farad'n is right up there with Irulan and Hadi Benotto in terms of writing skill. Yeah, we really do have to consider our epigraph writers. I've been thinking a lot about that lately, Julian, actually. It's a thing that I think about a lot. Is there an overall narrator or compiler or editor of the entire Dune series as an in-universe? Pardon me. It's interesting to have a look at the different historians, especially with Irulan and Dune, how heavy the propaganda is. I think it takes a different tack within Dune Messiah. It really does. I suppose it's a different type of propaganda, but it looks at different historians. And of course, I think, and my memory's a bit rusty, of course, but I remember Farad'n's role ultimately in this. It's interesting that we end up with certain people becoming historians within the Dune universe. And it seems to be that there's a knack for it within the Carino family, perhaps, and we're going to get a little bit of a sense of Farad'n's other interests, if you like. And I think that's kind of the point of this chapter, by the way, that there's some kind of direction going on here. And I think I know what it is. It's the suggestion ultimately, I think, that's going to be put to Farad'n is that there's people around him who are trying to manipulate him into going for the throne. And I think possibly ultimately, because what's going on here isn't, I suppose Tyekanik brings the preacher here under certain circumstances, doesn't really quite get what he wants. But it's really what the preacher wants, I suppose, is what occurs in this chapter. But I think it's ultimately to sow a seed in Farad'n's head about other interests, if you like. And there's also something in this that I think whenever we get to it, suggests that there's some kind of compulsion already on Farad'n. And it's possible, I don't know if it's a weak one, or I suppose we'll have a look at it when we get to it, And of course, we have Farad'n's dream. And the point of this chapter, I suppose, is what's the importance of dreams, if you like. Certainly the conclusion of that would beg us to look at Farad'n's dream much more closely, I think. Right. Let's have a wee look. Julian, I think when you're saying the epigraphs being one of the favourite things, it's also the thing that really, one of the things that put me off the most about Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson's books was because of the epigraphs and how clever and the language within them and the way they sort of speak to the reader from different sort of, I suppose, different ways. Some of them are hagiographies and some of them are histories and some of them are songs, this kind of thing, But it's just that they're not the same, are they? Let's just catch your comments here. If knowledge of evolutionary memory changes time, does that mean that time is truly a projection? Knowledge or perceived knowledge of the future changes behavior, which changes outcomes. Yeah, so I thought you were going to get really heavy on me there for a second, Julian. Just at the start here. Paul and Leto have knowledge of evolutionary behavior intimately, so they can alter the bridge between, as Taraza says, matter and consciousness. The epigraphs become this kind of propagandized, historicized metafiction. The epigraphs also build the world and introduce the philosophy. Yes, they're very much a part of the verisimilitude of Dune, I think. And yeah, I do not trust them. I think after, particularly the first Dune book, I think it's very obvious. I think the whole first run of the book, the first several chapters were built. Leto is built up. Leto Atreides, Paul's father, and he's never quite there. If you see what I mean, and what we're this picture of the man who's pretty much an absentee father in that sense to Paul. The picture of him is highly unrealistic, and it's he died in comets speared across the sky, all of this kind of thing. That sounds familiar. I remember something like that, very similar, in some sort of comic book, actually, almost cliche, But yes, indeed, I think they're actually. Interestingly enough, I have a book, a Dune book here, which is a bunch of them, and it's. Oh dear. I'm not too sure what it is. I'll see if I can dig it out for you. It's a kind of the wit and wisdom of Frank Herbert's Dune, isn't it? But it's a kind of it's a long book, and they're kind of done in sort of calligraphic picture type things, if you like. I'll see if I can dig it out for next time. I'm just busy trying to sort some things out in the house at the minute, and it's a bit of a mess over there. I'm not going to just risk it, but I'll see if I can dig it out for next time. But I think pretty much everything in that book is just a collection of the epigraphs or key quotes from them, But yes, indeed, and I think what you're pointing out there before we pile into it, Julian, is that if knowledge of evolutionary memory changes time, does that mean that time is truly a projection? Knowledge or perceived knowledge of the future changes behavior, which changes outcomes. It's the whole point of oracles, isn't it? And there's a reason, therefore, that as much as a dream, a neuromancer, an interpreter of dreams, a diviner of dreams, is an oracle. And in this chapter, we actually get that sense here that what we're going to get Farad'n's dream explained. Or not explained. We're going to get told what the dream is, and they kind of be careful what you wish for, because you're not going to quite get it. Is that the preacher does, of course, interpret it, but refuses to tell him what that interpretation is, and that in itself is an action, I suppose, that's going to get him thinking. But by telling him what it means, would it make him act on it, etc.? Does that open up a path into the future that he will direct? It's exactly that kind of point. The whole thing about prescience, I think, within the Dune series. In this sense, it's possibly, I think, that what we've got here is the preacher acting on part of Paul Muad'Dib's plan to sort of his version of the golden path that's going to blend into Leto's, if you like, and that Farad'n's a piece in that, and that he's here to actually make sure that something happens, I think. Well, we'll see how it goes. As I said, folks, I'm not too sure, but it's an interesting one, this, that's for sure. When we get to the stolen journals, we'll get a face full of Leto's lies and intentional manipulations. It helps to compare the behavior outcome dichotomy of prescience to Oedipus in conversation. If Oedipus hadn't heard the oracle, would anything be different? It regardless. I don't. If it's knowledge, isn't it? It's with Oedipus, but everyone else is aware of the oracle, and everyone else acts upon it in that way. Whenever he does hear the oracle, and this is the thing about him, Julian, is that he acts upon that knowledge and removes himself consciously from his parents. I'm away. I'm not going to do you any harm. You'll never see me again. And that is therein lies the tragedy of Oedipus, because he does the right thing. with the knowledge, it's simply put that the people he does that aren't actually his real parents. It's that damned if you do, damned if you don't with him, I think, But hence the whole problem with the Oedipus complex thing is that Oedipus has no such, Oedipus makes a conscious decision to get to save his parents and exiles himself away from them. Um, hmm. I got it made me think about Jessica's the Sphinx the other week, actually, didn't it? That kind of thing. But it's a good, again, this is the thing. I suppose maybe the next time would be the time to do this. I don't have it. Do I have it here? I do actually. I'll tell you what. We'll see how we do. But I've been trying to keep some stuff on oracles from Herodotus, and it's just an example of how these things really did affect the real world. you know. But I thought I'd find a couple of interesting ones, and I was heading towards a couple more. What's this one? Pardon me. Oh, I'll tell you what I'll do is actually rather than try, I hadn't actually, is I'm gonna highlight them and mark them out actually, so I have a particular set of just some nice wee examples to give you. As I said, we're thinking about taking a wee episode towards the middle of the book to sit chat about things like this, even oracles in the ancient world and so on. But they're a big part of the ancient world for a long, long time. Herodotus in particular, there's a story in there that I really would like to sort of share with you, because it's about a king who puts, there's quite a few oracles in the world at that time in that area. There's I don't know, there's probably, I don't know, maybe 11 or 12, pretty big famous ones around that part of the world, if you like. But there's one king who, there's a story of it in Herodotus, who puts them all to the test, if you like, to see if they're true oracles. And only, I think if I'm correct, only two of them are. But that's one of the stories I would like to sort of find for you, There's Christopher. Christopher Crowley saying, I think the preacher, also known as Paul, had already given up the ghost, and the loss of his wife, coupled with his choice to abandon his kids, I think he stopped off the path. He might have had the ability to see what needed to be done, but he was just too human to see it through. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's interesting what Christopher, what the kind of the shade of Paul and Leto's other memory said the other week, that kind of thing. And it was just the suggestion that he hadn't died, he hadn't gone, and that he'd survived was possibly to see something through that little bit within the chapter between Chani and Paul. But yes, he's definitely, as he's stepping off, as you say, it's going to be for Leto to do it. And I always figured that he just didn't, with me, it's the one that it's his humanity that he can't give up, I think. I think that's the step too far, isn't it, with Paul? There's family dead, as you said, loss of the wife, and all of this. But what is it that makes him not able to go as far as Leto does, And I think that's possibly the difference. He's still too caught up in his own human. That sounds weird saying that, isn't it? Doesn't it? He might have had the ability to see what needed to be done, but he's just too human to see it through. There you go. That's what I was kind of trying to say there, Christopher. Julian Thompson said there's a level of quantum theory there too. Seeing measuring outcomes changes them. Paul sees something fluid and reactive made static by Leto. Palambasha gets into this in an epigraph soon. Thank you, Julian. Stepped off the path, I meant. Yes. He stepped off. Yes, indeed. Oh, goodness gracious, right? The comments are coming fast tonight. This is great, folks. It's an interesting epigraph, isn't it? Muad'Dib's achievement, because we often think of things within the Dune universe as in a funny way. We talk about the failure of Muad'Dib in some ways, but here is his achievement. Seeing that each individual unconscious bank of memories goes back to the primal cell of our common genes. That's where I jumped off and talked a bit about the common origin. Sorry, that was me jumping off into evolution. Seeing this and telling of it, making others aware, he made the audacious leap of decision. He set himself the task of integrating genetic memory into ongoing evolution. Thus did he break through time's veils, making a single thing of the future and the past. That was Muad'Dib's creation, embodied in his son and his daughter. And that's letting us know that this is part of, I suppose, that this idea is fundamental within his children, Leto and Ganima. But it's integrating the genetic memory into the ongoing evolution. I think that's ultimately going to be something that goes into the breeding program of Leto, to break through time's veils, head towards someone who is ultimately the breeding program. But from that point of view, anyway, that's a bit down the road. Sorry, is to breed someone who is hidden by prescience, the no gene. Testament of Arrakis by Hark al-Ada. And again, it's sort of very quickly, just I scribbled down a wee diagram from my own point of view. Let me get that out the road. It was just in a sense what I was trying to get from this. And that this was a single thing, if we like, the past, the now, and the future, genetic memory, prescient vision, and trying to sort of incorporate that genetic memory into evolution as it moves on down the road, I suppose. Is it? Yeah, evolution. Interesting thing. Sometimes a bit of a bad word in this country. Pardon me. Okie dokie, folks. Let's have a wee look now. Right, I'll just set my copy there. Right, I've been scribbling all day. My hands are killing me. So it's nice they're getting a bit of a break at the minute. Let me see, my window is open. Okay, let's get going. Farad'n strode through the garden compound of his grandfather's royal palace, watching his shadow grow shorter as the sun of Salusa Secundus climbed toward noon. He had to stretch himself a bit to keep step with the tall Bashar who accompanied him. So we've got our location, the Royal Palace, Shaddam IV's Royal Palace on Salusa Secundus, just before noon. And it's this garden compound. So straight off, as I said, this is a dialogue-heavy chapter, and there's an interesting little bit of tension in this, a little bit of pathos, a little bit of bathos too, I think. But it's an interesting what's going on here, and I think also, pardon me, sorry, a wee bit, my lemonade's a bit fizzy. Also, I think there's I was saying that last week. There's a couple of times in the previous chapter where Frank kind of pointed things out to us. I think he's going to do that here as well, and I think he's kind of letting you know how things kind of work in the Dune universe, I suppose, and it's a subtle thing to point out as well. So here we go. This is Farad'n. I have doubts, Tyekanik, he said. Pardon me. Although there's no denying the attractions of a throne, but he drew in a deep breath. I have so many interests, and I suppose within that, that's it, really, isn't it? If we take Farad'n as his character, and this is what's going to be what's going to happen in this chapter, I suppose, is ultimately the advice, if you like, that comes from the preacher. He's been shown the throne. Look at the shiny, but he has other interests. And I think the preacher is going to point out that the throne is maybe not the thing he should be looking at. It should be his other interests, if you see what I mean. So I think it's a very important opening little statement here from Farad'n. And Tyekanik, fresh from a savage argument. And I actually thought if we were going all alliterative here, we might have went fresh from a fierce argument with Farad'n's mother. But I think savage, that's a different choice of word, isn't it, really? But I liked it. Might have been too alliterative, perhaps. Fresh from a savage argument with Farad'n's mother, glanced sidelong at the prince, noting how the lad's flesh was firming as he approached his 18th birthday. There was less and less of Wensicia in him with each passing day, and more of old Shaddam, who had preferred his private pursuits to the responsibilities of royalty. That was what had cost him the throne in the end, of course. He'd grown soft in the ways of command. And what we have basically there is an assessment of Shaddam IV's failures, if you like, or the reason why he lost the throne, by a senior Sardaukar officer, albeit, I suppose, we're a few years down the road. Old Shaddam, private pursuits and the responsibilities of royalty. You have to make a choice, Tyekanik said. Oh, doubtless there'll be time for some of your interests, but Farad'n chewed his lip, we're told. Duty held him here, but he felt frustrated. He would far rather have gone back to the rock enclave where the sand trout experiments were being conducted. Aha. So we have a little bit of a reveal here as well. Excuse me a second, folks. Gosh. Just grab a couple of wee highlighters here. Sorry, I haven't got time to highlight this, but just for a wee thing here. But yes, indeed. So we have the fact that we got sand trout removed from Arrakis. So here we have the fact that they're on Salusa Secundus, that they've been transplanted here at a rock enclave, and that they're doing experiments on them, which is really important, I suppose. And it ultimately represents, as we'll find, we're going to talk about strategy and things like that, but ultimately this is a strategy to try and break the spice monopoly, as as I'm about to read to you, actually. But that's where Farad'n would rather be, with the science of it, I think, with the experiments, with the curiosity of it. And this is sort of suggestive as to his interests, if you like. That's where he'd rather be. Now there was a project with enormous potential. Wrest the spice monopoly from the Atreides, and anything might happen. I put next to that, if they did that, that'd be chaos. Who knows? Farad'n says, so you're sure that these twins will be eliminated? So that's that he knows of this plot. Nothing absolutely certain, my prince, says Tyekanik, but the prospects are good. And then we get, I suppose we had a little bit about this in the previous chapter, about the one poison, two poison kind of thing, about the game of the game played by nobles. And I suppose here's the flip side of it, if you like. So I wonder what Farad'n would score in the Atreides game of is it poisons? Where was it? I can't remember how. But we remember saying I wasn't too sure how you would possibly score in that. But it's kind of a suggestion of how of what life is like in the noble houses, if you like. The poisoning and all of this kind of thing is pretty much a fact of life, isn't it? But here we are. Farad'n shrugged. Assassination remained a fact of. Oh, sorry, I wanted to grab something here. Again. There we go. Assassination remained a fact of royal life. The language was filled with the subtle permutations of ways to eliminate important personages. By a single word, one could distinguish between poison in drink or poison in food. I'll grab the terminology of the Imperium here for us, just to have a wee look this up again for us. But this is Chaumarchy and Charmus and things like that, isn't it? So Charmus or Almus in some dialects is poison in solid food, as distinguished from poison administered in some other way. And Chaumarchy is musky or murky in some dialects, is the poison administered in a drink, hence musky or murky. So Charmus, I just scribble these in here, is the one in drink. Is that right? Hang on. No, that's food. Sorry. Charmus is the one that goes in food. Charmus, I'd have to be space. That's why I'm looking it up in my notes. Charmus, and the Chaumarchy is poison administered in drink, sometimes known as musky or murky. And that's the two words, of course, for Chaumarchy. That's a great word, isn't it? Murky. Or murky or musky. That's our two words from the terminology of the Imperium that we're referring to here. Between a single word, one could distinguish between poison in drink or poison in food. He presumed the elimination of the Atreides twins, would be accomplished by poison. It was not a pleasant thought. By all accounts, the twins were a most interesting pair. So we're sort of seeing a side of Farad'n, if you like, that's typical of a noble house, a great house within the Imperium: assassination, murder, poisoning, all of that stuff. Having people eaten by tigers, and that's all just part and parcel of it. But he'd much rather check out the experiments. He'd rather, and I think he finds the twins interesting, would probably rather have a conversation with them than kill them. And that's kind of, I think, is the senses that we're to try to get of Farad'n. I get the sense that he's almost equally interested and equally vicious, but it's just part that if that is part of imperial life, if you like, of his position within such a feudal world, feudal universe. Sorry. Wild Epigraph says, Julian, love it. Children's when Frank starts busting out the big ideas. Yeah, Julian, that's what I was saying. I think it might be necessary to stop halfway through this and sort of circle the wagons a little bit and kind of get some of those ideas and just run through them just so that we're all happy with them. Because I'm trying to at the minute I'm trying to sort of read up on that many different things. At the minute, I'm starting to get a little bit snowed under myself. But yeah, and I've been trying to look up a source of something, which I'm not having a lot of joy with. And then it's something that I did have a source for, and I cannot find it, and I think I've lost it. And I remember that trying to find it the first time was an absolute nightmare. But somehow I did. But I just have no. Yeah, I'll let you know. I'll not say what it is at this point. But I'm trying to look into the source of something that's actually in my PhD, and I don't think I've referenced it, etc. But I don't have the. I had an image that should have went with it, and I thought it was in my PhD, and it's not, which is sad. And it's in particular the image is part of the evidence for the thing. But I'm I'm probably just rambling here at the minute, folks. But it's something to do with harem, basically. But I'll get back to you on that anyway. Farad'n says, where are we? So it's kind of this, the throne is being offered up in a sense. You have to make a choice. Is it your interests or, are working towards a throne, learning the responsibilities of power and rule, this kind of thing. Would we have to move to Arrakis? Farad'n asked. It's the best choice. Put us at the point of greatest pressure. Farad'n appeared to be avoiding some question, and Tyekanik wondered what it might be. I'm troubled, Tyekanik, Farad'n said, speaking as they rounded a hedge corner and approached a fountain surrounded by giant black roses. Gardeners could be heard snipping beyond the hedges. Yes, Tyekanik prompted. This religion which you professed. Nothing strange about that, my prince, Tyekanik said, and hoped his voice remained firm. This religion speaks to the warrior in me. It is a fitting religion for a Sardaukar. That at least was true. So I was wondering is how much of this is an act, and probably most of it. Yes, but my mother seems so pleased by it. We get Tyekanik's thoughts here. Damn Wensicia, he thought. She's made her own son suspicious. I care not what your mother thinks, Tyekanik said. A man's religion is his own affair. Perhaps she sees something in this that may help to put you on the throne. That was my thought, Farad'n said. And Tyekanik's thoughts are, this is a sharp lad, Tyekanik thought. He said, look into the religion for yourself. You'll see at once why I chose it. Still, Muad'Dib's preachings. He was an Atreides after all. I can only say that the ways of God are mysterious, Tyekanik said. I see. Tell me, Tyek, why did you ask me to walk with you just now? It's almost noon, and usually you're off to some place or other at my mother's command this time of day. So Tyekanik stopped at a stone bench which looked upon the fountain and the giant roses beyond. The splashing waters soothed him, and he kept his attention upon it as he spoke. And it's a kind of, this is the thing that he's going to focus on. So it's an interesting little setup, or I suppose we've got this kind of garden on this kind of pretty much battered world, but we have this little area, and we have a stone sort of little chair. We have this fountain, and then these black roses. Of course, black roses don't occur in nature, do they? But I don't know what would we think that black roses represent, but I tend to go with death. Death, doom, destruction, that kind of thing. Yeah, let me just have a look. I thought, did I scribble something down about black roses? Quite possibly not. I thought I did. I drew one. Yeah, just have a not sure if there's any specific black roses. Very pretty, of course. They're all artificial, aren't they? Oh, let's have a look. Oh, black rose symbolism on Wikipedia. Flowers commonly called black roses do not exist in said color. Instead, they actually have a dark shade, such as the black magic, barcarolle, black beauty, and baccarat. Baccarat, sorry, is that varieties? They can be artificially colored as well. In the language of flowers, roses have many different meanings, but black roses symbolize ideas such as hatred, despair, death, or rebirths. It also says underneath that the black rose is an anarchist symbol. Black Rose was the title of a respected journal of anarchist ideas published in the Boston area during the 1970s, as well as the name of an anarchist lecture series addressed by notable anarchists and libertarian socialists, including Murray Bookchin and Noam Chomsky into the 1990s. So there you go. I did not know that. So, but yeah, black roses. It's an interesting. It's a very kind of. It's almost a very sort of gothic setup. This, isn't it? It's a bit. You could shoot a Sisters of Mercy pop video here or something like that, I think. Let's catch up with your comments. Wee second, folks. Julian saying there's clearly something in Farad'n, his character and his genes, that becomes integral in the making of the no gene. He can embrace the new, certainly. We get a lot of him from his writings as Hark al-Ada. He's curious as hell, a born academic and a writer like his aunt. I have a soft spot for the younger Carinos. Carl's saying, Julian, it's possible Count Fenring was said to be a cousin of Shaddam, and he's the first to have the no gene. Yeah, that's what we kind of went with that, didn't we? Yeah, it's yeah. Yes, I don't know, and I think I still think Fenring was kind of a huge thing for Frank, but one of the ones that I'm just going to drop that and let you wonder because he likes to do it. But Fenring's just far too interesting, and from what we know of him, why can't someone with prescience see? Why can't Paul Atreides see Fenring? It's the only logical answer, isn't it? It just totally makes sense. That furtiveness, that being a genetic eunuch, etc., all that. But there's something about him. He's a field Kwisatz Haderach, but he can't be seen by somebody with prescience. Why have I never seen this guy before? I totally think that's the what would you call it? Patient zero, if you like, of the no gene, the archetype, if you like. It's such a pity we don't see more of that character. But then again, that's what makes him super interesting, really fascinating. You know. Pardon me. Let's see. Oh, it's possible Count Fenring was said to be a cousin of Shaddam, and he's the first to have the no gene. Yeah, so it's quite likely that it would be the gene might be hanging around the Carino genes, or the certainly within cousins of that family, etc. If it's manifests itself in Fenring, and it sounds like Fenring himself is a product of the Bene Gesserit breeding program. You know, Julian says, which makes me ask why Fenring didn't appear in Children. Yeah, his failure as a Kwisatz Haderach is the bedrock of the no gene. Fenring was voiced by Tim Curry once, so I see him in my head casting. That'll be good. We're just watching Lex. Earlier tonight, I'd watched the last series, because I hadn't been able to see it for a while. But I hadn't watched 1, 2, 3, and then I just started showing it to my wife. So we just started watching the first 2 episodes, and just the start of the second episode, and Tim Curry's in it. Just watching them tonight. There you go. Pardon me. But yeah, it's one of those things, and there's something else that Frank's going to say it in this chapter. I think it was Frank telling us this kind of thing, but it's and that's the whole point. Possibly at the end of June is the thing that could derail absolutely everything. Is this guy that, you think nothing of? It seems kind of weaselish and dangerous, but doesn't seem to be that big of a threat. And who is this guy? Because he is the most dangerous thing there. And it is a way to make a character very enigmatic, isn't it? Either way, his family becomes locked into the Atreides golden path. The Sardaukar become drummed into the Farad'n and become the fish speakers. Irulan and Farad'n become the Atreides scribes. Yes. My theory is that Carlos says, my theory is that Shaddam had him assassinated for his betraying him by not killing Paul. Is that... I think we have evidence in June, Carlos, that Fenring outlives Shaddam. Don't we? Hang on a second. I'll just quickly look it up. Because, let me see. Because after all of that, he appears in Appendix 4 of the book as well. You go, well, why? Well, Shaddam the Fourth states in Appendix 4 of June, Carlos, are 10,134, and he dies in 10,202. Count Hazimir Fenring is also in Appendix 4. His dates are 10,133 to 10,225. So he lives for 23 years after Shaddam the Fourth. What does it say about him here, just quickly? Distaff, cousin of House Carino, so it's a cousin on the female side. He was a childhood companion of Shaddam the Fourth. The frequently discredited pirate history of Carino related the curious story that Fenring was responsible for the Chalmarchy, which disposed of Elrud the Ninth. All accounts agree that Fenring was the closest friend Shaddam the Fourth possessed. The imperial chores carried out by Count Fenring included that of imperial agent on Arrakis during the Harkonnen regime there, and then later Siridar Absentia of Caladan, which is the odd one. He joined Shaddam the Fourth in retirement, it says on Salusa Secundus. So at this point, he's dead. But let me see. I certainly don't think are we there to. Pardon me. Alia's dates aren't in this book, which is interestingly enough. But I think we did a wee bit of work on the timeline, just sort of what year we were around. I think right at the start. Let me see. I'm heading towards my second notebook on this, folks. Timeline years later. I think it's in here somewhere. I'll see if I can dig that up actually, because I remember doing it because I looked at it on a couple of websites, and I think they didn't have it quite right. But it's definitely in there somewhere. I'll have a wee nosy, see if I can find it. Let's see. By the way, the family becomes locked into the Atreides golden path. Yes, indeed. Constant theories that Shaddam had him assassinated. So yeah, if that's Fenring, Fenring outlives him. Yeah, but Eldrick alone was enough to hide a conspiracy. Someone with prescience, yes, indeed. So yeah, you can hide people with prescience, I suppose, but you can be hidden from prescience then, isn't that it? I suppose, if prescience goes looking. Different uses for still others, yeah. And moneying the things with uses of oracles. And I wonder, is that how, again, if Paul's vision is no, I don't know, it's interesting, isn't it? Anybody with prescience that sort of muddies things, I suppose. Hmm. But yes, indeed. And there's no kind of, I don't know, there's no kind of genetic engineering going on with the Bene Gesserit anyway. But certainly, I think I generally got the sense that also that Fenring is the Bene Gesserit's man, if you see what I mean. And he married his wife, Margot and Casimir Fenring are in love, aren't they? Margot Fenring, his wife, they marry. They're allowed to marry for love, which says quite a lot, I think. But I think I always thought that Fenring was a Benny. I suppose in the first Dune book, he's the equivalent of an agent. I thought like Miles Teg, he's their kind of Miles Teg in the Empire, if you like. But he's the Emperor's buddy. They've got him perfectly located, you know. I think it's and he loves his lady. I think he's a fascinating character, you know. I guess again, I'm just sort of guessing, wondering, you know. And I said I know that there's sort of um, non-Frank Herbert stuff written about the character, but I think it's better just to have fun wondering. I think, you know. But it's the little things is what we're going to talk about actually, and it's a thing that it's a motif of Frank's in his writing. I think within his certainly within plot devices, and I think he's going to tell in this chapter. He tells us about it. You know. Let's see, where were we, folks? The religion. Let's just catch up. Oh yes, and it's his. So we stopped at the stone bench. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I've turned the page over. I think that's right. Giant roses splashing water soothed him, and he kept his attention upon it as he spoke. My prince, I've done something which your mother may not like. And he thought, if he believes that, her damnable scheme will work. So what we've got going on here is obviously the plan by Wensicia to kind of get Farad'n into this sort of religion, etc., etc. How Tyekanik's going about it, I suppose, is a wee bit of kind of an attempt at a bit of reverse psychology. And it seems that, like most teenagers, I think that Farad'n wants to sort of not do what his controlling mother wants. Is kind of, I think that kind of thing is going on here. And the fact that his mother doesn't like this is the way that I suppose to entice the young man in towards it. I think there used to be a TV show called Your Mother Wouldn't Like It in the UK. Goodness, it was on when I was a kid. So, and if he believes that, Tyekanik had almost hoped Wansicia's scheme would fail. Bringing that damnable preacher here, she was insane, and the cost. So this is going to be interesting. So here, as Tyekanik remained silent, waiting, Farad'n asked, "All right, Tyke, what have you done?" And Tyekanik said, "I've brought a practitioner of oneromancy," Tyekanik said. Let me just check that I wrote all of that down there. I think I might have missed a word or two. Nope, I've brought a practitioner of oneromancy. So oneromancy from oneros is a Greek word for dreams, and mantia, which is divination or prophecy. Put them together and you get a neuromancy, so divination or prophecy of dreams. Greek mythology, oneros is a dream, oneroi or dreams, and they are the sons of Nyx, if you go with not Herodotus, sorry, Hesiod, and they're the brothers of Hypnos. And I suppose what we have oneromancy is a form of divination by dreams. So they're not actually a personification or anything like that in that sense. They're just kind of, sort of spirits, if you like. Zeus would say on the dream to, inform someone, this kind of thing. So neuromancer, I suppose the other one on my wall. I don't know if you can see this. This is it's kind of got it's one of those wallpapers with kind of lots of French things on it and stuff. It's got butterflies and watches and all sorts of things. The thing that it has in common is that they're all waltzes. I think popular waltzes. Pardon me, but running down just in front of me there, it's got the words. Part of it's got ornithologique. It's all the words for bird. Ornithologiste in French, ornithomancy, ornithomasian, and ornithophile. There you go. But ornithomancy is, of course, divination. bird entrails, but ornithomancy, ornithopters, etc. within Dune. And I often thought that the way that the ornithopters are portrayed within Dune is kind of symbolic of an oracle, going along with the worm being a serpent and the ornithopter being the hawk in the sky, if you see what I mean, or the eagle in the sky representing Zeus, that kind of thing. They're often quite important within sort of the symbols of that kind of thing. But anyway, this is a practitioner of dreams, is what Tyekanik has brought to the planet here, and this is how he's describing the preacher, by the way. So Farad'n shot a sharp glance at his companion. Some of the older Sardaukar played the dream interpretation game, and had done so increasingly since their defeat by that supreme dreamer, Muad'Dib. And that sounds like it's a term of respect, doesn't it? I think from this older Sardaukar, but they're kind of using the interpretation of dreams. I suppose it'll tell us here somewhere within their dreams they reasoned might lay away by and glory. Tyekanik had always eschewed this play. Not interested. This is why Farad'n says this. This doesn't sound like you, Tyke, Farad'n said. Then I can only speak from my new religion, he said, addressing the fountain. So he keeps his focus on this when he's not that comfortable, I think. To speak of religion was, of course, why they'd risk bringing the preacher here. Then speak from this religion, Farad'n said, as my prince commands. He turned, looked at this youthful holder of all dreams, which now were distilled into the path which House Corino would follow. Church and state, my prince, even scientific reason and faith, and even more, progress and traditions, all of these are reconciled in the teachings of Muad'Dib. He taught that there are no intransigent opposites, except in the beliefs of men and sometimes in their dreams. One discovers the future in the past, and both are part of a whole. Now, Farad'n, in spite of doubts which he could not dispel, Farad'n found himself impressed by these words. So, where are we? Church and state, scientific reason and faith, dichotomies, if you like, opposites, not necessarily opposites, but things that shouldn't really move together. Progress and traditions. All of these are reconciled in the teachings of Muad'Dib. I wouldn't necessarily separate traditions with progress. I think they can go hand in hand. He taught that there are no intransigent opposites, except in the beliefs of men and sometimes in their dreams. One discovers the future in the past, and both are part of a whole. So this is the wisdom of the religion that's being imparted to Farad'n by Tyekanik, and that in spite of his doubts, we're told he finds this okay. This sounds interesting. He heard a note of reluctant sincerity in Tyekanik's voice, as though the man spoke against inner compulsions. And that's why you bring me this interpreter of dreams. And by the way, I just thought that little bit there, he heard a note of reluctant sincerity in Tyekanik's voice, as though the man spoke against inner compulsions. I think there's a little bit of misreading going on between Farad'n and Tyekanik. That's why you bring me this interpreter of dreams. Yes, my prince, perhaps your dream penetrates time. You win back your consciousness of your inner being when you recognize the universe. When you recognize the universe as a coherent whole. Your dreams, well, bear with me a wee second, folks. I think I made a wee mistake there when I wrote that down. You win back your consciousness of your 21 of your inner being when you of your I've written the word of your twice. That was the problem. Sorry about that. I'll read that again. Yes, my prince, perhaps your dream penetrates time. You win back your consciousness of your inner being when you recognize the universe as a coherent whole. Your dreams, well, but I spoke idly of my dreams, Farad'n protested. They're a curiosity, no more. I never once suspected that you... My prince, nothing you do can be unimportant. That's very flattering, Tyke. That's the other thing, I suppose. So and again, it's obvious, isn't it? I suppose, but we've got the reverse psychology, flattery is the other thing, and the joy of displeasing mum will be the three things I think that get Farad'n motivated here. Nothing you can do can be unimportant. Imagine hearing that. What that would do for your ego. That's very flattering, Tag. Do you really believe this fellow can see into the heart of grand mysteries? I do, my prince. Then let my mother be displeased. You will see him, of course, since you brought him to displease my mother. So that's I've written down here at this point. I've got flattery plus reverse psychology plus the desire to displease mum is what gets the preacher in the door here. Excuse me, I got a wee tickly nose again here. Oh, I'm going to have to get some more fluids here, folks. There we go. So, Tyekanik's thoughts here. Does he mock me? Tyekanik wondered, and he said, I must warn you that the old man wears a mask. It is an Ixian device which enables the sightless to see with their skin. Oops, sorry. That sounds interesting, doesn't it? He is blind. Now, I've just written here, I've sort of been saying to you guys to point out a few times within this book, but the idea of second skins is quite important, I think, just metaphorically. And it's to do with, and I have to dig this up, by the way, but oh, excuse me, I've promised I'll actually get a hold of this and read this out, actually. I was really going to keep it for the point where Leto goes with the second skin at that point. But we're going to have a wee look at the Moapo. I've got an article by, is it Marie Noel Zinder, called the Moapo of Leto Atreides. And it's all to do with this idea of the psychological second skin, if you like. But here we have this mask, which is, I suppose, like a mesh that covers the face just down below the chin, and is essentially a second. It's a visual device. It's an Ixian device that allows the sightless to see with their skin. I think that's a pretty interesting little idea. He is blind. Yes, my prince. Does he know who I am? I told him, my prince. Very well. Let us go to him. If my prince will wait a moment, I will bring the man to him. Farad'n looked around the fountain garden, smiled. As good a place as any for this foolishness. Have you told him what I dreamed? Only in general terms, my prince. He will ask you for a personal accounting. Oh, very well. I'll wait here. Bring the fellow. Farad'n turned his head and heard Tyekanik retire in haste. A gardener could be seen working just beyond the hedge, the top of a brown-capped head, the flashing of shears poking along the greenery. The movement was hypnotic. I was kind of wondering, I wonder who the gardener is. Is it a face dancer? Is it is it actually the gardener? This kind of thing, all sorts of things. So Farad'n's thoughts here are, this dream business is nonsense, Farad'n thought. It was wrong of Tyek to do this without consulting me. Strange that Tyek should get religion at his age, and now it's dreams. Presently he heard footsteps behind him. Tyekanik's familiar positive stride and a more dragging gait. Farad'n turned, stared at the approaching dream interpreter. The Ixian mask was a black gauzy affair which concealed the face from the forehead to below the chin. There were no eye slits in the mask. If one were to believe the Ixian boasts, the entire mask was a single eye. I just plunked a big eye just for that on my week. So it's quite an interesting thing. And I kind of, initially whenever I was reading this, I kind of thought, Why the mask? And it's actually fundamentally it's the same reason why anybody would wear a mask in old various plays and things like this and stories, is to conceal his physical identity. There's no need for it, is there? If this is Paul Atreides, if this is the real preacher, because he has his, or maybe he doesn't have that sight, but he's got an Ixian device, um, as opposed to Tleilaxu metal eyes. Here's an alternative, I suppose. It kind of makes you wonder about what's the big deal about the the eyes. That if there's an alternative, you know, is to wear this. Interesting. Excuse me, a wee second. Hmm. Right. So Tyekanik stepped 2 paces from Farad'n. Sorry, he stopped, apologies, 2 paces from Farad'n, but the masked old man approached to less than a pace. The interpreter of dreams, Tyekanik said. Farad'n nodded. The masked old man coughed in a remote grunting fashion, as though trying to bring something up from his stomach. Farad'n was actually conscious of a sour spice smell from the old man. It emanated from the long grey robe which covered his body. Is that mask truly a part of your flesh? Farad'n asked, realizing he was trying to delay the subject of his dreams. While I wear it, the old man said, and his voice carried a bitter twang and just a suggestion of the Fremen accent. Your dream, he said. Tell me. Farad'n shrugged. Why not? That was why Tiger brought the old man. That's Frank Farad'n's thoughts there, sorry. Um, or was it? Ah, and you're going to get this again, this doubt back and forth. I suppose we just had, is he mocking me from Tyekanik previously? And now we have, why not? That was why Tyekanik brought the old man, or was it? Doubts gripped Farad'n, and he asked, "Are you truly a practitioner of oneiromancy? I have come to interpret your dreams, puissant lord." Puissant, that's a good word, isn't it? I always have trouble saying that one. I always used to say it as I always used to pronounce it as puissant. And it's puissant, isn't it? I think powerful, influential, that kind of thing. But puissant, I still find it really hard to say that word. Puissant. There we go. I got it right there. It's a word I stumble over, and I preferred the way I used to pronounce it, even though it was wrong. Just as easier to say. So, are you truly a practitioner of neuromancy? I've come to interpret your dreams, puissant lord. And again, Farad'n shrugged. This masked figure made him nervous, and he glanced at Tyekanik, who remained where he stood, arms folded, staring at the fountain. Your dream, then, the old man pressed. Right, here we go, and I'll stop in a minute, check comments and stuff, but here we get Farad'n's dream here. So Farad'n inhaled deeply, began to relate the dream. It became easier to talk as he fully got into it. He told about the water flowing upward in the well, about the worlds about the worlds which were atoms dancing in his head, about the snake which transformed himself into a sandworm and exploded in a cloud of dust. Telling about the snake, he was surprised to discover required more effort. A terrible reluctance inhibited him, and this made him angry as he spoke. The old man remained impassive as Farad'n at last fell silent. The black gauze mask moved silently to his breathing. Farad'n waited. The silence continued. I think this is going to be this kind of almost funny kind of cat and mouse thing where, what are you going to do? I didn't say I would do that. Nope. That's got to go back and forth here. If you give me a wee second, folks, I'm just going to nip quickly to the loo, and then I'll check your comments, etc. here. And I'll be right back. Excuse me one wee second. Yeah, hello. Sorry about that, folks. Oh, that's better anyway. Let me see. I'll catch up here. Yeah, so we've just had Farad'n's dream. I'll very quickly recap that here. Um, and water flowing upward. He told about the water flowing upward in the well, about the worlds which were atoms dancing in his head, about the snake which transformed itself into a sandworm and exploded in a cloud of dust. Telling about the snake, he was surprised to discover required more effort. I've written why. And then immediately after that, it was a terrible reluctance inhibited him, and this made him angry as he spoke. And I've written next to that, is this the Bene Gesserit at work here? Has there been some sort of compulsion put on him? As we've seen done elsewhere within the story, if you see what I mean. He's trying to talk about something and suddenly finds it very difficult. That stinks of Bene Gesserit compulsion, doesn't it? I think. Would suggest that he's been, and I think it's very interesting and would possibly tell the old man, the preacher, quite a bit, possibly. Let's have a look at your comments here a second, folks. We'll catch up. All the way back to that's where Edric Lombs. Yes, that's where we were the last time. Right, let's see. Christopher Curry said Miles Tegg, my second favourite Dune after all. Second favourite character, yeah, you think? Yeah. Worm from Leto being my favourite. I think he's a good character. Very good character. It'll be interesting to have a look at him. Yeah, I think he's a favourite of a lot of people, actually, Christopher, to be honest. He's a firm favourite character in the Dune series for those who get all the way through. I think he's pretty popular. I think I get the sense that he tends to be the most popular character from the last two books, I think. I got a friend to read Julian, and I got a friend to read June. He loves Tegg. Yeah. Jim Thompson. Is this the only time Paul leaves Arrakis? Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? It was why is he here is a big question. And I think so. Yeah, it's very interesting that he has left Arrakis, I think. Very interesting indeed. Christopher said technically he might have left to oversee the jihad, but in terms of Brian Herbert wrote, yes, that would be correct. Frank likes gardening. Yes. Here the mask reminds me of Tiresias visiting Creon, says Julian. The reference to the water in the well also reminds me of Hegel's Geist, an upswelling of human consciousness and spirit into history like a geyser. Frank starts using Hegel more and more. That's really interesting. I don't know much about Hegel. I've got a little kind of excuse me. One of those little I must dig it out, see where it is. Kind of like it's a little primer book on philosophers. I think I've got two of them somewhere. Not too sure where they are. That sounds interesting because I think I'm going to run to the end of the chapter and scribble that down. Let me just quickly get that. Hegel reference water in the well. Hegel's Geist. I'm unfamiliar, but I'm going to look it up. Not right now, obviously. An upswelling. That sounds really interesting. An upswelling of Hegel. Sorry, an upswelling of human unconsciousness and spirit into history like a geyser. Frank starts using Hegel more and more. Yeah. Thank you very much, Julian. The mask reminds me of Tiresias visiting Creon. Well, there was something else that made me think about the mask as well. I was thinking of something, and it's gone from my head. It's totally gone from my head. But it was a meshed kind of. It was something to do with the ancient world as well. But yeah, the mask. I suppose the mask works on many levels, doesn't it? But within this one. If you're much as he's blind and has no eyes, if you like. This is the emperor of the known universe, and his face will have been on coins and paper. If there's money, Solaris is whatever they're called, Solaris. the face of your emperor is probably the one face that everybody's going to know in the empire, I feel like. And I think fundamentally it's to hide his identity in this. You know, and it's very dramatic. If this isn't it, you could certainly imagine this being filmed. You could film it in a really kind of gothic way. The Black Rose is the man with the mask, this kind of thing, and the fact that this allows him to see as a normal person, I suppose, through contact with the skin. I think it's very interesting. Yeah. It makes me think of the King in Yellow as well, the whole mask. I wear no man, but I always think of that when it comes to masks. Pardon me. I had a bit of fun trying to pick a story for Halloween tonight. Just sort of quickly off kilter, folks, for a wee second. But I'm always looking at. There's an H.P. Lovecraft story about dogs I was going to do. But I'm always like wee stories about dogs. But I was looking through different things just to try and pick stuff for Halloween, and I was considering, still am considering getting some of that King in Yellow stuff done. But I always love that. You can take off your mask. I wear no mask. No mask. That kind of thing. But I was also had a wee nosy at the Castle of Otranto and the hieroglyphic tales. But I'd found the wee Ray Bradbury story, The Emissary, and a wee little compendium of horror stories. Just some wee random book I found in a bookshop. I read it there. Just I had some Ray Bradbury short stories, but it's a cracker little story. I loved it. I was having a wee nosy through Robert Chambers and King in Yellow and stuff like that. Nice to sort of just nosy through some scary short stories over Halloween, just to get in the mood. But yes, indeed. Thank you very much for that, Julian. Yeah. I said we'll definitely get a chat soon. I'm so busy at the minute. We're snowed under with our house and things, and more work unfortunately is picked up. I suppose it's not unfortunate, is it? It's good to have work. Right, let's see where we're at. But I will definitely get in touch very soon, folks. And I keep apologising to everybody about my correspondence, just so far behind. But I'm hoping to get a wee day soon. Actually, with one set of exams coming up soon, I'll have a bit of free time. Actually, I'll be losing a few students coming up towards Christmas. But yeah, we'll definitely do that. Again, apologies. It's just been a bit of a crazy time here. Pardon me. Yeah, and there's a little bit of, I don't know, is it just the standard kind of court paranoia? Perhaps with Farad'n and Tyekanik, there's not quite a full level of trust with these guys, is there? And I suppose we're going to find out why. So that was me going on about Puissant. Right, again, Farad'n shrugged. The masked figure made him nervous, and he glanced at Tyekanik, who remained where he stood, arms folded, staring at the fountain. Your dream, then, the old man pressed. Farad'n inhaled deeply, began to... Oh, sorry, I've already read that. Apologies. Now, just running through the dream again. About the snake, and he was surprised. And of course, we just said at the end of that it seems that there's a terrible reluctance inhibited him, and this made him angry as he spoke. And we're saying that seems like some kind of Benny... The suggestion is that there's some kind of Bene Gesserit compulsion there. The old man remained impassive as Farad'n at last fell silent. So if this is Paul Atreides, he would have certainly picked up on that, I think. The black gauze mask moved slightly to his breathing. Farad'n waited and the silence continued. Presently, Farad'n asked, "Aren't you going to interpret my dream?" "I have interpreted it," he said, seeming to come from his voice seeming to come from a long distance. Well, Farad'n heard his own voice squeaking and telling him the tension his dream had produced. And that's in himself. Still, the old man remained impassively silent. "Tell me then." Pardon me, the anger was obvious in his tone. "I said I'd interpret," the old man said. "I did not agree to tell you my interpretation." Even Tyekanik was moved by this, dropping his arms into balled fists at his sides. What? He grated. I did not say I'd reveal my interpretations, the old man said. You wish more pay? Farad'n asked. I did not ask for pay when I was brought here. A certain cold pride in the response softened Farad'n's anger. This was a brave old man, at any rate. He must know death would follow disobedience. Or sorry, death could follow disobedience. And there you go. I suppose that's the nature of these people. You don't do what I tell you, I'll have you killed. That really is your morality out the window, isn't it? But it's not that kind of world, I suppose. Tyekanik, allow me, my prince, Tyekanik said, as Farad'n started to speak. Then, will you tell us why you won't reveal your interpretation? So this is a bit more of a, rather than getting angry, Tyekanik's being a bit more clever about it. Explain yourself, I suppose, is what he's doing here. Yes, my lord. So it gets a positive reaction from the old man. Yes, my lords. The dream tells me there will be no purpose in explaining these things. Farad'n could not contain himself. Are you saying I already know the meaning of my dreams? Of my dream? Perhaps you do, my lord, but that is not my jest. Tyekanik moved up to stand beside Farad'n. Both glared at the old man. Explain yourself, Tyekanik said, again, sort of directly. Indeed, Farad'n said. If I were to speak of this dream, to explore these matters of water and dust, snakes and worms, to analyze the atoms which dance in your head as they do in mine. Puissant lord, my words would only confuse you, and you would insist upon misunderstanding. Do you fear that your words must anger me? Farad'n demanded. My lord, you're already angry. And I think that's quite funny. I'm pointing out the obvious. He's been angry. Is it that you don't trust us? Tyekanik asked. Why would you trust these two complete strangers, I suppose, is the question you might ask. Wonder. That is very close to the mark, my lord. I do not trust either of you, and for the simple reason that you do not trust yourselves. And we've seen that with the doubts between the two, that Farad'n and Tyekanik, that there's not on some level, I suppose that Farad'n can have Tyekanik killed at any point he likes, and we've seen that sort of behavior with, I suppose, Tyekanik's relationship with Wensicia as well. But it's part of his world as well, and he lives in that moment, I think. But what Preacher is saying is, if I were to speak of your dreams, to explore the matters of the dream, like the water and the dust, the snakes and the worms, if I was to analyze this stuff, my words would confuse you. You'd end up confused, and you'd misinterpret what I've told you. And therefore, that would cause you. What he's suggesting is that you would act in the wrong manner because you will misinterpret it. So you don't want me to interpret it for you. And it's almost a paradoxical statement in that sense, isn't it? And do you fear that your words might anger me? You're already angry, is the response. You don't trust us? No. So this isn't going down too well. Tyke says this. You walk dangerously close to the edge, Tyekanik said. Men have been killed for behavior less abusive than yours. And then Farad'n nodded. Don't tempt us to anger. So, of course, the old man responds here. The fatal consequences of Carino anger are well known, my lord, of Salusa Secundus, the old man said. So, yeah, you're known for killing people when you get angry, I suppose, is that point. Not news to me. Tyekanik put a restraining hand on Farad'n's arm, asked, "Are you trying to goad us into killing you?" And it's a good. That's another. Why so brazen? Are you actually, and it makes them think. I think it's kind of funny, because the question gets thinking in a way that he's not used to. Farad'n had not thought of, considered what such behavior might mean. And we will get to the gist of it, but essentially the preacher can act whatever way he wants because there's a bond on him. here, and I think that the guild are involved in this. Um, and to harm him, there would be incredibly bad consequences, I think. And it wouldn't matter who Farad'n was, if you see what I mean. I think they'd be far-reaching for their family on this planet, and might end up having them cut off. And I think that's not the agenda of the preacher here. But what's going on here in this chapter is that the preacher's agenda, not these two men's. Though they've brought him here, I suppose they'll Tyekanik's had him brought here. But Farad'n, are you trying to goad us into killing you? Farad'n had not thought of that, felt a chill now as he considered what such behaviour might mean. A chill? That's bothered him. His thoughts here are, was this old man who called himself the preacher, was he more than he appeared? What might be the consequences of his death? Martyrs could be dangerous creations. And again, we've got as much of the thoughts are going on. The response is almost as if he knows those thoughts. I doubt you will kill me no matter what I say, the preacher said. I think you know my value, Bashar, and your prince now suspects it. You're not going to harm me. I think you know my value, Bashar. I think incidentally that neither of them know his true value, I think. It's hidden by the veil. You absolutely refuse to interpret his dream, Tyekanik asked. I have interpreted it, and you will not reveal what you see in it. Now, interestingly enough, I just wrote down there, it's unclear who asks that there, but I'm assuming it's Tyekanik. But it could be Tyekanik or Farad'n, but it isn't absolutely clear. There's no direction with the language. Preacher, this is the preacher. Do you blame me, my lord? How can you be valuable to me? Farad'n asked. The preacher held out his right hand. If I but beckon with this hand, Duncan Idaho will come to me and he will obey me. So I've written, I suppose, that this is the equivalent of a Dune Universe name drop, I think. And Farad'n responds with, what idle boast is this? But Tyekanik shook his head, recalling his argument with Wensicia. He said, my prince, it could be true. This preacher has many followers on Dune. Why didn't you tell me he was from that place? Farad'n asked. Before Tyekanik could answer, the preacher addressed Farad'n. My lord, you must not feel guilty about Arrakis. You are but a product of your times. This is a special pleading which any man may make when his guilts assail him. Guilts? Farad'n was outraged. The preacher only shrugged. Why a lot of shrugging in this channel? It seems to be Farad'n's go-to thing. Oddly, this shifted Farad'n from outrage to amusement. He laughed, throwing his head back, drawing a startled glance from Tyekanik. Then, I like you, preacher. This gratifies me, Prince. It's almost a cliche, isn't it? In that sense, two people sort of, sort of trying to press on each other, and I suppose one of them kind of relenting and going, I like you. It's almost a cliche, isn't it? That's a funny thing. I think it's one of those things that can happen in real life as well, I think. Goodness gracious me. Okay. So there's a bit of humor about this. I like your moxie, this kind of thing, I think is where it's coming from. This gratifies me, Prince. Suppressing a chuckle, Farad'n said, I suppose it shows you he's not a complete psychopath like, Fade Rautha or the Beast Raban. There's a sense of humor here. Somebody's having a giggle about this, and there's a power imbalance, if you like, but it's not as big an imbalance as you might think. In fact, maybe the power works slightly differently here than young Farad'n thinks. And then we begin to get to see this kind of sense of his royalty here, if you like. We'll find an apartment here in the palace. It's like, oh, we're going to keep you. We'll find you an apartment here in the palace. You will be my official interpreter of dreams, even though you never give me a word about interpretation. And you can advise me about Dune. I have a great curiosity about that place. This I cannot do, Prince. An edge of his anger returned. Farad'n glared at the black mask. And why not, why not, pray tell? And this interruption comes from, it's not an interruption, I suppose, but Tyekanik interjects here. My prince, Tyekanik said, again touching Farad'n's arm. What is it, Tyekanik? We brought him here under bonded agreement with the guild. He is to be returned to Dune. And I think, there you go. That's the little bit that as much as he's been brought here, it's cost Wensicia a fortune, and he's got to bring him here. It's probably going to cost. He has to go back as well, and it's a bonded agreement with the guild. So the whole point is, if they killed this guy, they have an agreement with the guild. It essentially, if any harm, I think, in that sense, comes to the preacher because of this, the punishment could be from the guild is just you're cut off. No space travel for you, and that I think would be pretty bad for House Carino, who, by all accounts, Salusa Secundus is meant to be a bit of a hell planet, or it's supposed to be, home of the Sardaukar. It's their prison planet, isn't it? It's not a nice place at all to live on. Is Farad'n's unconscious sensing the change that will occur in the universe, the golden path and the scattering? Yeah, I've have to have a wee bit more of a think about his dreams, actually. That's kind of what I was saying. I was hoping some folks would have, like yourself, Julian, would have a wee bit of a jump in on that. But I'm going to have a wee bit of a think about it. But is his unconscious sensing the change that will occur in the human universe, the golden path and the scattering? I think it's certainly maybe in the sense that it's being I think the preacher's maybe trying to point it out to him. It's the sense that you're living in a certain time, isn't it? Things are going to happen, this kind of thing. But is his unconscious sensing that change that will occur in the human universe? Quite possibly. I mean, it's hard to say what sort of genes are within Farad'n. They must be something pretty good. He seems to be quite similar to a young Paul here. Temper was always Paul Atreides' problem, wasn't it? He's always angry. Paul, apart from, I suppose, whenever things whenever things are just going on normally, but whenever things go badly, Paul's main default emotion is anger, and he gets angry quickly, I think, here. And it's, I suppose, part of that kind of possibly get the sense that he's a bit spoiled here and his life's going to have to change and become a bit tougher. Conscious sense is Farad'n's unconscious sensing the change that will occur in the human universe. It's possible that there's a sense that things are going to change for him soon, because Julian, this one is it's a bit like Fade previously that we're told leading about Fade's birthday. Whenever we meet him properly, it's the same thing here. This one, our introduction, well, we've met Farad'n briefly, haven't we? But this one's, we're told we're heading towards his 18th birthday. That it's approaching. It's approaching soon, isn't it? I think. Yes. Just Tyekanik notice how the lad's flesh is firming as he approached his 18th birthday. So that's the day he's going to really take charge of House. If his mother's acting as a regent in his place, then that's the day he's going to take charge, isn't it? So it's I suppose you're saying is within the universe that his own world is going to change, and it's a question of is he going to go for the throne. So it's and even with Tyekanik, sort of the initial discussion at the beginning of this chapter before they go down into the whole religion thing is it's no and he's even it's how it starts. He's saying it's no denying the attractions of a throne, but I've got other interests. So it's, I think Tyekanik kind of saying you're going to have to make a choice soon, aren't you? At the start. So maybe it's an unconscious thing, but I think it's also conscious as well. But it's maybe, as much as I'm not maybe saying the golden path and the scattering, not quite yet, but just the changes that are going to occur for him would be quite big, I think, and would have reverberations throughout the universe. And that's also one of the reasons I think why the preacher's here to talk to him, because ultimately he is going to have he's going to be in a position of power for quite some time, isn't he? Ultimately, and he has the ability to kick off too. He's still this, I suppose, ultimate at the age of 18. Farad'n's in charge of the Sardaukar from that point on, isn't he? I think. Which would be his power base. No. Christopher said, no, I would say Paul's default state was mopey. Mate, I don't want to be the chosen one. Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah. Moping about, yeah, I would agree with that. It's whenever he does have his anger, though. I suppose it's the other state that's described a fair bit. But yes, I would agree. I think it's the kind of the particularly a Jim putting those troubled teenager traits onto that, kind of extending that onto a universal super being is quite interesting, I think. Yeah, mopey. That's a good one. But you would be if you had all these problems, wouldn't you? But God, these guys would kill me in a second if I had a conversation with them. They wouldn't be able to. Are you saying something I don't like? I will have you killed. And I suppose the word guilt. There's some interesting language there. But yes, indeed, this is the reason. The guild. It's a bonded agreement with the guild. He's to be returned to Dune. Preacher says, "I am summoned back to Arrakis." The preacher said, "Who summons you?" Farad'n demanded. "A power greater than thine, Prince." And he is kind of poking at them a bit, I think. Farad'n shot a questioning glance at Tyekanik. Is he an Atreides spy? And I wrote next to that, that's a really stupid question to ask your Bashar out loud, if you like. But the response here is interesting. Not likely, my prince. Alia has put a price upon his head. So I've done a little wanted poster on my notes here. Wanted the preacher with a reward and some cash. But there's a bounty on the preacher. And it's interesting, I think, that at this point, Alia is also aware that there's a suspicion that the preacher might be Paul. So there's a possibility that she's putting a price on her own brother's head. But this is good enough, I think, for Tyekanik that Alia wants him dead. It's a price upon his head. At the very least, I suppose arrested, maybe. But it sounds like to kill him. If it's not the Atreides, then who summons you? Farad'n asked, returning his attention to the preacher. A power greater than the Atreides. A chuckle escaped Farad'n. This was only mystic nonsense. How could Tyke be fooled by such stuff? This preacher had been summoned, most likely by a dream. Of what importance are dreams? And it's a good question, and it's a throwaway question within the book, isn't it? And I think it's a very important question, and something that that Farad'n hasn't quite figured out. This has been a waste of time, Tyke, Farad'n said. Why did you subject me to this farce? Sorry, just very quickly, I suppose, just what's the importance of dream? Has he been summoned by a dream? Quite possibly, in that sense, the dream of Paul Muad'Dib. This is still a part of it, possibly. But I think it's that question that's of interest here, and it's why we do have Farad'n's dream in this chapter. Water flowing upward in the well against the worlds which were atoms, about the worlds which were atoms dancing in his head. The snake transformed himself into a sandworm and exploded in a cloud of dust. Hopefully all of this stuff, I'll have to have a wee look into this, but we'll have to see that there is some importance about this. And I think that the snake that's transforming itself into a sandworm is and exploded in the cloud of dust. It's possibly something to do with the sandworm, the sandtrap program that they have at the rock here on Salusa Secundus. I think it's possibly referring to that reform, but there is meaning to Farad'n's dream, I suppose, and it's interesting that his thoughts are what importance are dreams. He thinks it's a waste of time, Tyekanik. Why did you subject me to this farce? And then here we go from Tyekanik. He says, there's a double price here, my prince, Tyekanik said. The interpreter of dreams promised to deliver Duncan, Idaho as an agent of House Carino. All he asked was to meet you and interpret your dream. And Tyekanik added to himself, or so he told Wensicia. New doubts assailed the Bashar. So the preacher is here because the preacher wants to be here. It's what he's asked for, and he's got it. And he's offered up Duncan, Idaho as a reward. And it's like who's been controlling who here, if you see what I mean. And he's found out the nature of Farad'n's dream, which is what he wanted, to meet him and interpret his dream. And he's done that. He didn't say anything about telling him, And this is what he's told Wensicia. Why is my dream so important to you, old man? Farad'n asked. Your dream tells me that great events move toward a logical conclusion, the preacher said. I must hasten my return. So I think it's sort of fulfilling a step, and I suppose the golden path of Paul as it's sort of heading towards blending into the golden path of Leto. I think that's the best way for me to kind of describe it, if you like, that it's proceeding the way. So it's proceeding the way it should, if you see what I mean. And that possibly he's come here to witness it, and then to sort of act by saying and doing certain things to kind of influence, I think, Farad'n down that, along that particular route, if that makes sense. Pardon me. So your dream tells me that great events move towards a logical conclusion. The preacher said, I must hasten my return. Mocking Farad'n said, and you will remain inscrutable, giving me no advice. Advice, Prince, is a dangerous commodity. But I will venture a few words which you may take as advice or in any other way which pleases you. By all means, Farad'n said. The preacher held his masked face rigidly, confronting Farad'n. Governments may, and here we go. We've got two sort of decent speeches from the preacher here, I think, that are kind of important in a sense. Governments may rise and fall for reasons which appear insignificant, Prince. What small events? An argument between two women, which way the wind blows on a certain day, a sneeze, a cough, the length of garment, or the chance collision of a fleck of sand in a courtier's eye. It is not always the majestic concerns of imperial ministers which dictate the course of history, nor is it necessarily the pontifications of priests which move the hands of God. Farad'n found himself profoundly stirred by these words and could not explain his emotions. I've written next to this as a using voice here in a very subtle way. Tyekanik, however, focused on one phrase. Why did this preacher speak of a garment? Tyekanik's mind focused on the imperial costumes dispatched to the Atreides twins, the tigers trained to attack. So it's interesting that there's all sorts of things that little things can cause all sorts of problems, basically, is what they're being told. Within that, it could be a sneeze, a cough, the length of a garment, the chance collision of that kind of thing. But he fixates on that because of the plan that they have, the plot and the conspiracy that's underway, the plans, etc. And it's sort of worrying Tyekanik. Was this, and the questions that Tyekanik ask here, I don't know what you think, but I think they're actually valid, and I'm wondering, was this old man voicing a subtle warning? It's a good question. Is this what they're getting here? How much did he know? How much does he know? And how is this advice, Farad'n asked. If you would succeed, the preacher said, you must reduce your strategy to its point of application. Where does one apply strategy? At a particular place and with a particular people in mind. But even with the greatest concern for minutiae, some small detail with no significance attached to it will escape you. Can your strategy prince be reduced to the ambitions of a regional governor's wife? His voice cold, Tyekanik interrupted. Why do you harp upon strategy, preacher? What is it you think my prince will have? He is being led to desire a throne, the preacher said. I wish him good luck, but he will need much more than luck. So there we go. That, again, right from the beginning, a throne or other interests, and this is what he's being led to desire, is the throne. Good luck with that, but he's going to need more than luck. That's what he's being told. If you would, just backing up the second chunky speech here, if you like, from the preacher, if you would succeed in doing what you want to do, you must reduce your strategy to its point of application. Where does one apply strategy? I would say always in the most broadest sense possible. But Frank's disagreeing with a particular place and with a particular people in mind. But even with the greatest concern for minutiae, some small detail with no significance attached to it will escape you. This is the curse of the mentat as well, isn't it? That no matter what, but to get always the best sort of computations from the mentat, these kind of prime computations, etc., the more data they have, the better. And that's why mentats are totally sort of vulnerable and fallible, is that they can be mucked around with. You can feed them false data, etc. But if that's not the case, if you've got the smartest kind of mentat with as much as information as he can possibly get his hands on, there's always going to be something that they don't know, which ultimately can affect things. And it is the little things in life, I think, and it is one of the things that Frank does in the Dune series. This is the one thing I wanted to point out, is that as much as it's a thing throughout the Dune books, as much as we tend to, the people are focused on the big things, it's the little things that go kaboom and cause lots of havoc. And this lesson is being told to Farad'n, who is going to be, and as we pointed out, is one of our epigraph writers, is one of our historians of Dune. He's learning a lesson here, and as much as he's going to be the historian for Leto II as the God Emperor, he's learning lessons from Paul Muad'Dib Atreides here, though he might not know it. Pardon me. But he's basically saying if you want to succeed, you should focus on a particular thing, narrow your focus, and use your strategy to where you wish to apply it. Where does one apply it? At a particular place and with a particular people in mind. But he's being led to desire from the and I wish him good luck, but he needs much more than luck. And I suppose it's just the point of this is it's kind of almost a theoretical thing, isn't it? It's a thing of dreams for Farad'n. He has no real idea what it's going to be like to rule. These are dangerous words, Farad'n said. How is it you dare such words? We have another one of these speeches here. Ambitions tend to remain undisturbed by realities, the preacher said. I dare such words because you stand at a crossroad. You could become admirable, but now you're surrounded by those who are strategy oriented. You're young and strong and tough, but you lack a certain advanced training by which your character might evolve. This is sad because you have weaknesses whose dimensions I have described. This is Tyekanik here. What do you mean? Have a care when you speak, Farad'n said. What is this weakness? And here it is. In particular, just in relation to the previous bit, but where does one apply strategy? It's a particular place and a particular people in mind, I suppose, but the people of the empire, really, maybe in a broader sense. So, what do you mean? Have a care when you speak, Farad'n said. What is this weakness? You've given no thought to the kind of society you might prefer. the preacher said. You do not consider the hopes of your subjects. Even the form of the Imperium which you seek has little shape in your imaginings. He turned his masked face towards Tyekanik. Your eye is upon the power, not upon its subtle uses and its perils. Your future is filled thus with manifest unknowns, with arguing women, with coughs and windy days. How could you create an epoch when you cannot see every detail? Your tough mind will not serve you. This is where you are weak. One of my favorite, coughs and all of these kind of things. As much as you often hear me, I'm one of these people with a permanent cough, if you like. One of my favorite things of all time from the ancient world is oh god, I'm gonna have to read this again sometime soon. It's Xenophon's Anabasis, the Persian expedition, the march up country, if you like. That's the bit where they get to the. I think it's the bit where they possibly happens more than once actually, but I'm pretty sure it's the bit where they get to the sea. It's it's either that or it's a different. It's one of the two things. But the basically, we're here. Some guy just goes chew. One of the 10,000 sneezes, and they're all like, "Ho ho ho! Zeus has spoken. Olympic Games time." Because some guy sneezes, and it's in the Anabasis, and it's one of my favorite things. But it's coughs and sneezes and the size of a garment. Somebody could trip on people have died in all sorts of strange ways. Little things do indeed change history. Sometimes some very daft things, amazing coincidences, this kind of thing. But you're being pointed by people to the throne who've kind of got no idea what to do with it once you've got it, basically. And that you're meant to be an emperor, so you would rule an empire and serve its people. And what kind of society would you want as an emperor? You haven't even thought of this, have you? That's basically what we're being told here. And your eyes upon the power, but not the subtle uses and its perils. It's a dangerous thing to have as well. How can you create an epoch when you cannot see every detail? Your tough mind will not serve you. This is where you're weak. So no matter what, you're never going to know everything. And I suppose is this maybe ultimately the desire for prescience, where it comes from, if you like, in some sense. Is the preacher speaking from experience? Is what I'm trying to say here. Is this kind of how he reflects upon his own experiences? Maybe now. Is this where Paul was weak? Farad'n studied the old man for a long space, wondering at the deeper issues implied by such thoughts, at the persistence of such discredited concepts. Morality? Social goals? They were myths to be put beside belief in an upward movement of evolution. Myths to put beside belief in an upward movement of evolution. And I was kind of wondering, is that possibly the water flowing up the well reference there? Something to do with that? Tyekanik said, "We've had enough words. What of the price agreed upon, preacher?" "Duncan, Idaho is yours," the preacher said. "Have a care how you use him. He is a jewel beyond price." "Oh, we've a suitable mission for him," Tyekanik said. He glanced at Farad'n. "By your leave, Prince?" "Send him packing before I change my mind," Farad'n said. Then, glaring at Tyekanik, "I don't like the way you've used me, Tyke." "Forgive him, Prince," the preacher said. "Your faith does without even knowing it." Pardon me. Bowing, the preacher hurried to see him away. Farad'n watched the retreating backs, thought, I must look into this religion which Tyek espouses, and he smiled ruefully. What a dream interpreter. But what matter? My dream was not an important thing. So that was my bad handwriting ended that just but what matter it was, wasn't it? Let me see, sorry, very quickly. What a dream interpreter, but what matter? My dream was not an important thing. And the importance of dreams, I suppose. The importance of dreams. I was looking in there, seeing that the Abraxas idea is a big part of Jungian kind of that sort of idea. Importance of dreams, Jungian and Freudian. Psychoanalysis. Analysis and psychology. There we go, because they're not the same thing. But yes, indeed, and we're heading towards. And I suppose a lot of that and Blaxus and all sorts of esoteric stuff. I suppose that's going to. I've always thought these things were a wee bit kind of cookie myself, but there we go, folks. That's the end of the chapter. If anybody's got any wee questions or anything, fire away. I will quickly check your comments here. How do we do? Not too bad. As I said, it's a dialogue-heavy. Chapters tend to take me longer to write out, and then they tend to go a lot quicker than the kind of meat and bones episodic chapters, if you like. Some of them take like 5 or 6 hours, but it's the big dialogue-heavy ones. Whoosh. There's a few interesting things in there. Yes, indeed. Let me catch up with your comments, folks. Where did we get to? Mike Williams, Jackarutu. Hi, Mike. Thanks for joining us. I don't want to be the chosen one. Yeah, man. Julian said, Paul has this brilliantly stern, evaluative style which broadens the mind to micro events and macro shifting. Other memory gives the ability to see the butterfly effect as a greater pattern. And Frank uses the Jungian model for talking about the unconscious. I'm not aware how Jung talked about dream interpretation. I've got a couple of wee books here. I spotted one the other. The Wisdom of the Dream is one of them, if I remember the title right. And I've got a big volume of Jung's work on the archetypes of the collective unconscious. Is that volume 3 or something of his stuff? Again, just with stuff over here a wee bit messy at the minute, folks, but we're heading in that direction, so we're certainly going to have to dig stuff out. We've had a wee nosy at some of the kind of mandalas and stuff that are in that book before. So I'll maybe try and fish them out. But yes, we're heading into all of that stuff. And as I said, I was kind of interested to see that the things like Abraxas and stuff and these kind of, esoteric sort of Gnostic kind of early I don't know, how would they put it, early ADs kind of religions that formed out of Christianity and some other things, that you can see their influence in the thinking of Jung. And of course, there's a whole, what I like to call the iconotropy of these guys, which is something that bothers me quite severely about their ideas. But it's interesting. I think we'll get to see some particularly cookie stuff coming up. Yeah. It was a good wee chapter. There's a couple of questions really about it, but it's definitely this is the preacher, and this is a manipulation of Farad'n, I think. And I think this is the Paul, and I think somebody said I think probably is the only time I'd completely forgotten that he left the planet. I'd forgotten that he was here in this chapter altogether. So it's interesting to see, but I think it probably is the only time he leaves Arrakis. I think he's heading back anyway. It's a very, very interesting chapter. It is. I think it's Paul sowing a seed for something definitely later on. The little things, as they say, be mindful of them, and what sort of emperor would you be? This kind of thing. Yeah. The only other thing I suppose always to remember is that what we've learned about Paul Atreides so far is that the visions that he does see futures, or even with this particular, but things aren't always quite exactly the same as he sees them, you know. But there we go, folks. We managed to get another chapter done this way. I was really hard pressed to get that one done for tonight, so apologies about not being yesterday, but just very busy. And I wish I'm kind of missing the little short chapters at the minute. I'd love one just to sort of help me sort of get ahead. Let me see. Another chunky one. Yeah, oh, they're chunky enough. They're not super massive or anything, but I think it's a wee while before I'm going to hit something small. Well, probably the one after. It's not too bad, but they're a decent enough length, you know. Our next one begins with chapter 15, and he saw a vision of armor. Better for me never to become Emperor, Leto said. So that's the next one. I'm up to page 94 in this book, so we're probably going to hit over the first 100 pages next time. I look forward to getting that one done. There we go. Yes, indeed, the Jungian stuff. I'm not a big fan of modern day psychology and the whole the Jungian and Freudian schools, if you like. And I've seen some people, particularly counselors, chat away. I've listened to them chat to their patients, believe it or not, especially at my old offices, and and maul and mutilate the story of Oedipus in particular. But they always like to fish it out of the bag. Um, I don't know. It's not good thinking, I think. Um, but yeah, it's. I'm pretty sure that they misinterpreted the myths, and Siggy Freud's equally guilty. I think, you know. Guilty. Sorry, it's him that's Freud's guilty of the Oedipus misinterpretation. I think, and Jung is it's a much more broader misinterpretation of things from the classical world and stuff like that. You know, well, it's interesting stuff, and they're good thinkers in their own way, aren't they? But I've always thought that Freudian psychology is good for one person, and that person's name Sigmund Freud. You know, but yes, the Jungian stuff is really where we focus with Frank, isn't it? But I've got a couple of wee books here, Julian. So I'll dig them out actually for next time, probably just to have a. I'll see if I can find that wee thing on Hegel, wherever it would be. But yes, indeed, I kind of I used to read stuff like this. I think dream interpretations are quite interesting, but I think they can vary widely from culture to culture. Um, you know, in many ways, and but yes, indeed, the Farad'n uses the Jungian model for talking about the unconscious. I'm not aware how Jung talked about dream interpretation. Let me see. What was the other thing I was thinking on just the other day? The idea of a collective unconscious, if you like, is kind of one that's pottering around with. It's within Erewhon, and it's one that's discussed greatly at the time in Victorian society. In my PhD around the chapter on evolution, there's stuff relating to the discussion of that in the general public from people like George Bernard Shaw and things like that as well. So it's kind of an interesting wee thing to look at. But there we go, folks. Listen, I'm pooped. So I'll just say thank you very much. It's another chapter done. So it's just a couple of hours and 10 minutes for this one, but just as it's a lot of dialogue, a couple of wee things of note and of interest, and as pointed out, a rare appearance of Muad'Dib off the planet of Arrakis here as the preacher. I always think still that the only thing in my head is that constantly being described as an old man. I think I sometimes have bother with Paul. I wouldn't think he'd be that old at this point. But I think it's probably all the damage and living in such a harsh environment that might make him not look too young. But then again, you can't see his face here, can you? But it's just possibly the assumption that he's an old man. It's interesting also that there's a presumption by Farad'n that something's going to happen. And his presumption is that Leto and Ganima are going to be killed by poison, because that's how we do things. That's part of royal life. He doesn't suspect that. So he's aware of a plot to kill him, but he doesn't suspect the tiger thing, I think. She might see as a tad uncivilized. I don't know. Interesting. tiger, tiger, burning bright, that kind of thing, you know. Well, listen, folks, I'll say goodnight because I'm a wee bit pooped. The weekend's here, so I'm sure you've all got things to do and enjoy yourselves with. And it's, yeah, we're heading towards Christmas now soon, aren't we? It's into November. Halloween's over. So actually, we're on the 2nd of November now. There you go. So I'll tell you what, folks, I aim to be back for Thursday if we can make it next week, as always. That's always the goal, is to make Thursday at 10 p.m. GMT with our next chapter. That'll be chapter 15. And as I said, it is the goal, and hopefully we'll make it. But in the result of me failing to get the work done on time, then we would always go with the Friday. I think that's just the way we have to. But I do prefer to go with the Thursday. I think more people can make it, etc. You know, just for the live audience and stuff. You know. But there we go, folks. And I'm going to get once I am caught up, folks. I'm going to get all my correspondence. I'm going to take a day and organize it. And Julian, I'll fire you an email and sort out some sort of times for a Zoom chat. And there's a few other people to do that with as well, actually. But there we go. Thanks very much, Carlos. You take it easy, guys. I'll say good night. Look after yourselves no matter where you are, folks. Be safe. It's a crazy, crazy world. And I'll see you real soon. And keep enjoying your science fiction in the meantime. Maybe the next time, I think there's a bit of Dune news about it, actually. Maybe we'll keep it for the next time and we'll have a bit of an natter about it. Julian Thompson saying bye also. Good night, everybody. All the very best. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Do 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 ba 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 dum ba.